Good morning. Thanks for coming. I'm David Stevens. I'm a program manager on the Application Insights team. And this morning, I'm really excited to share some new features we're adding to Application Insights so that you as product owners or other members of development teams can better understand how users use your products so you can make better product and feature decisions. Before I show you what we've built, I kind of want to frame this with the picture we use about what problems we're trying to solve. So if you're here at Build this morning, you made your way out to Seattle, you probably have an app. And I want you to think about what your app is. It could be what your team is building at your company. It could be some personal app you just built. But I want you to picture it, especially if it's a web app. This is all going to be, I'm going to say app, I mean web app. And so now I want you, now that you have your app in your mind, think about why you built it. And I'm going to call that reason the business result you're trying to achieve. So maybe it's just getting lots of viewers to your blog and you have a message to share. Maybe it's revenue. Maybe it's an intranet app in your company that's trying to make some process more efficient. Whatever it is, that's why you're writing software. That's why it's so cool. And as we all know, it's pretty easy. You write the code, boom, problem solved, you're all done. Except for, that's not true at all. So there's a bunch of things missing from this picture. The first is that something has to run the code. Code doesn't just work on its own. It needs a runtime, it needs hardware, it needs all these things. And so we have the cloud, and you should build, and you're going to hear a lot about the cloud. But it's not this simple because the interactions between your software and the cloud are really complex. Software itself is complex, the cloud is complex, and together you have this sort of danger zone of problems you have to think about. Like, does your app even run right now? Is it online? And if it is it fast enough? So for something important like the home page or some page or feature that matters a lot, is it fast enough, or is that having customers leave? Even if it is up and it's fast, is it having errors? Is it reliable? Or is it unreliable? And even if you can prove to yourself that this is all working on your local machine or even on production device where you are, how confident are you that it's working in some other part of the world? And so this is a problem. And to solve it, what we've done, as you're probably aware, is we have monitoring tools. We have tools that give us information and visibility into the interactions between our software and the cloud. And so if you're not familiar, Application Insights is one such service. So Application Insights is an application performance management service in Azure. You can monitor a whole bunch of different kinds of web apps. And we send that telemetry to the cloud where you can get smart diagnostics, you can get visualizations of your app topology, you can get alerts based on errors, you can get all these great things. And this helps sort of solve this part of this picture, where you now have confidence your app is running well in the cloud. So are we done? No. There's something really important that's missing here, and that's users, right? Software itself doesn't solve the problem. Software helps people solve the problem. And so as I started looking at this, and a lot of my work as a product owner, this middle link here is where I spend most of my time thinking, I'm sure a lot of you do also. You can build software right and still not have built the right software. And so, where apps and clouds are complex, people are the most complex thing on this picture. And so this interaction here in the middle about building software that people can actually use and that they do use and that they enjoy to use is really important. And we have a set of questions like this, like, is anyone using the thing that you just built? So you go spend a whole bunch of time, have some great new feature you're excited about, you deploy it, and then are there crickets? Or are people really using it? And how are they using it? And if you get one person to use it successfully, how many in total do you have? So daily and monthly active users, we all are thinking about that. How do you answer that question? And if you do have lots of users on one day, do they come back? So for some feature, are they just coming in and then churning, or are they coming back week after week, month after month? And then especially for a product owner, it's important to understand how individuals use your app. So can I go down and have the level of visibility to see one person and the interactions that they had with what I built? So we have the same problem. We need visibility into this interaction between people and your app. And what I'm excited to show you now is a new set of features we've added to App Insights to do just this. So Application Insights can span between helping me understand the availability, performance, and reliability of my app, and now also usage of my app. And so to do that, we're adding 5 new tools to Application Insights. the users, sessions, events, retention, and user groups tools. I'll show all of these in a second. And so without explaining a little bit more, I will just dive right into this now. So I'm going to demo from an app that is a subset of data, kind of, it's an app I work on, but it's kind of a subset of the actual data. So the numbers aren't real, but the overall shape of this data set is, and it's one that I think about a lot. So this is really useful to me. I'm just in the normal Azure portal in the Application Insights resource for this app. And what you'll see now, if you go check this out, this morning this went live, we have this new usage section, some features that are in preview. And this is where you can try all these out. So I'm just going to jump right in here to this users tool. Now this tool is all about helping me understand how many people are using my app, and then letting me slice that data in more ways so I can understand why. And so I can see right here that I have 33,000 unique users over the last 24 hours. And at the top here I have a query builder. And I can kind of read this like a sentence. So it says, show me all users who did any event in page view in the last 24 hours in 1 hour time buckets with no splits or filters applied. And I also get these insights. I'll just mention these briefly. These are basically looking over all of the events and page views that my app has sent, and then detecting large clusters of them that have a bunch of things in common. So I can see that out of everything that was sent, 40% of them are one specific event. An event is like some kind of action a user did from the United States. So you can sometimes quickly discover these pockets of events, and those are useful. If I wanted to, I can just change this out to see a week. And so I can see a weekend here. This is kind of lining up with what I'd expect. Now let's say I want to go understand this data in a little bit more detail. I can scroll down here and I see these histograms. And what these are doing is showing me common splits I might want to apply to my data. So splitting by different event names. I can just click this and now I can see, what actions users are taking most frequently. I can split by country or region. So I can see most of my users in the US. There's some in India and the UK, and then several others. I can split by version. So as we introduce new versions of this app, I can watch the old ones overtake the new ones. So I can see that my 8.0 release is more than my 7, or is kind of gaining on the 7.0. So you can keep going with this, and it's just a really helpful way. You also have access to all these splits here, and these can also be custom properties that your app is sending that aren't just the ones that App Insights sends by default. So this is looking at everything my app has done, but what if I want to go look at one particular feature? And so to do that, I open this drop down here, which shows me every different custom event and page view that my app has sent to Application Insights. And a custom event, you can think of it as just some string that you have that gets sent to App Insights when a user does some action. So it's like, clicked my button, opened some page, opened a tab, signed up for an account. So I have a feature in my app called the search tool. And so I'm just going to go here to this event that says open search. I happen to know this is what this event is called. And so now I can see users just of that one feature. I'll remove the split here. So I can see I have 275 users of this in the last week. And I can just kind of keep exploring through this data, and I can compare again, how does that vary by version and country and these other things. And all these features keep updating based on the query I have applied. So, this is interesting, but I'm curious now, how does one person use this search tool? And to do that, we have this section at the bottom called Sample of These Users. And what this does is looks at all the users who've sent events to my resource, and then picks the top 5 based on how many sessions they've sent. And so I can just pick one of these, and if I click on their user ID, I'll go to the Events tool. And so I've been showing you the Users tool, which is all about counting numbers of users. The Events tool is really similar, except for it counts numbers of events. And it loads here. And so you'll see that it's filtered me now automatically just down to one individual user ID. And so I can see kind of the arc of when they used this. And if I go ahead and split by event name, now in this kind of simple way, I can look and see what one individual person did. So I can see they were really active on one day, and then they kind of used it recently. And if I zoom out maybe to 2 weeks, I don't actually know. Yeah, okay, so they really were just super active in my product this one day. Maybe they were trying it out. It looks like they were all using, if you look at the names here, they were all events coming from my search window. And so it looks like when this person tried my app, they weren't necessarily discovering all the other features I have. They were just in this one tool. So maybe that's interesting to me that maybe I should go build more links from the search tool into other parts of my app. So if I wanted to, by the way, I can click this button and open it in Application Analytics, and I can go write my own queries and take this data further. But the point here is that you can go from an aggregate of all my users now down to an individual and get these insights all here in the Azure portal. So I want to take this a step further, though. Instead of looking at either everyone or just an individual, what if I want to understand a certain cohort of users that have something in common? So one thing to understand about my app is that it has sort of, you can think of it as like a free trial mode and then the full mode, or if you're sort of like local only or fully configured. And so one thing I'm interested in is how do people who have fully configured my app use search compared to ones who haven't. And so to do this, I can create a new user group. And so this is a capability that lets you choose certain things that users have done, like using a certain event. In this case, I know it's has this certain name. It's successfully installed the thing that lets you configure basically from one mode to the other. And then I can apply other filters if I wanted to and save this and give it a name, but I've actually already gone ahead and done this. And so now what I can do is instead of choosing all users, I can just choose users who configured. And so now what this has done is figured out the query for me to write, that it's actually just taking that subset of users, and then among people who've done that configuration action, how have they used search? And so then all of this below here is also up to date. So I could dive into an individual, I can do all these splits. So you kind of get the picture, but this is now taking you across these multiple different levels of visibility across the usage of your app, which is pretty useful. So now what I want to do is switch gears and show you the last tool we have, which is the retention tool. And so, like I mentioned earlier, a really important question is if people use your app at all, do they come back over time? And so that's what the retention tool is all about. So what I can do here, it says show users who used anything and then return to use anything else by weeks over the last month. And so what this does is compute, you should think of each of these buckets as people who used my app or those certain set of events that I have selected during this range of days. Among those people, how many came back after less than a week, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, etc. And I can see that I have a pretty sharp drop-off. So let's use that. I can be more precise than this, though. I can go and choose that event I mentioned earlier that represents people going from the two different trial modes. And then I can have them come back and do anything else. So how do these users that I care a lot about perform in my app, and how are they retained? And so I can do this, and then it'll take a second. And I can see this, again, looks like I'm doing all right at less than a week, but then more than that, in this particular week, it was a little higher, but other than that, it drops off pretty sharply. And so I can learn a couple things from this. Suppose that I've deployed some A/B test or some experiment or made some push notification or an email or anything else I'm trying to use to increase retention of my app. I can go look up for whatever time I did that and see if it had the effect that I wanted. Is one way you can use this. Another is to identify when the sharp drop-off occurs, because in most apps there is this steep cliff. And so I can identify, okay, it happens after about a week. And so if I were going to do one of those actions I could use to increase the retention of my app, I would want to do that maybe in that time range and see if that makes the impact I want. So a really powerful, it requires a lot of querying to actually generate just this thing. So we're kind of trying to make that easier to access so that more people can ask this question, because it's a really useful one as we're all trying to kind of grow the usage of whatever we're building. It's easier to keep the customers you have rather than get new ones. So that was kind of a quick look at what we've added. And just to kind of bring it back, I'll put this back. Now with Application Insights, I can monitor not just my code, but now also my users to get this more complete picture of my software and if the investments I'm putting into it are really having the outcomes that I'm expecting. So how do you get started with this? Everything I've showed relies on these two different types of Application Insights telemetry events. There's like 7 or 8 of different ones, but just these specific two, these page views and custom events. And so the easiest way to get started is to add the Application Insights JavaScript SDK to my web app on the client side. And when you do that, it's just a snippet you can add. That will automatically track page views. So every time a user loads the page, it'll send something that says when and what country and what the name of the page was and a bunch of other things by default, and you can customize that. And you can send custom events just with a single line of code. You just say track event and then give it a name, whatever string you want, and also custom properties there too. So if you try this out, we'd love to hear from you. There's going to be a blog post about this tomorrow, and if you leave a comment there, I'll read it and the whole team will read it. And we also have a user voice. We'd love to hear from you. You can probably find me on Twitter too. If you're interested in more about Azure monitoring and application insights and all this great stuff, there's a session right after this about machine learning-based diagnostics and application insights, so I encourage you to stick around for that. There's a session later this afternoon that my colleague Bo is going to present about different integrations Application Insights has with Visual Studio and VSTS and VS Code, so sort of integrating into your whole DevOps flow. And then there's a big session on this top one here on Friday afternoon that's sort of an end-to-end of all the monitoring capabilities in Azure, including Service Map and Application Insights. So I encourage you to check all that out too. Probably hear this in all of these, but I encourage you to submit an eval. It's really important to hear if we're on track and answering the questions you're looking for. So I'll be around after this, and I'd love to hear from all of you. So thank you.